I found the letter taped to the back of a canvas painting I had just hung in our new apartment. It wasn't there when I bought the frame, and it certainly wasn't there when I unpacked the box. But as I adjusted the level, my fingers brushed against rough, textured paper hidden on the reverse side. The envelope was yellowed, brittle, and smelled faintly of ozone and dried iron. My name was scrawled on the front in a handwriting that sent a cold spike of adrenaline down my spine. It was my handwriting. Not a forgery, not a close approximation. It was the specific, shaky slant of my own hand, but older, much older. Inside, there was a single sheet of paper dated November 14th, 2074. The message was short, desperate, and terrifyingly specific. Do not ask Sofia to marry you tonight. If you do, the world will end in ashes because of what our son becomes. I stood there, the velvet box containing the engagement ring burning a hole in my pocket, convinced this was some elaborate, cruel joke. But then, I read the next line. The letter continued with a precision that made my breath catch in my throat. At exactly 9:03 p.m., the power in the entire block will fail. 10 seconds later, a blue sedan will lose control and crash into the fire hydrant outside your window. Please, Elias. Believe me. I looked at the digital clock on the microwave. It was 9:02 p.m. I laughed nervously, a hollow sound in the empty kitchen. It was ridiculous. It was impossible. I told myself that one of my friends had set this up, a prank to ease my pre-proposal jitters. I watched the numbers on the clock change. 9:03 p.m. Instantaneously, the hum of the refrigerator died, the lights overhead flickered, and plunged the apartment into darkness. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I rushed to the window, counting the seconds in the silence. 8, 9, 10. The screech of tires tore through the night, followed by the sickening crunch of metal hitting metal and the hiss of water spraying onto the pavement. A blue sedan. Just as the letter predicted, I sat on the floor in the dark, the letter trembling in my hands. The universe had just given me irrefutable proof, a glimpse into a causal loop that defied all logic. But then, the door opened. Sofia walked in, illuminated by the flashlight on her phone, laughing about the blackout. She looked ethereal, her smile cutting through the fear that had paralyzed. In that moment, human arrogance took over. I convinced myself that I could change the future. That love was stronger than some deterministic timeline written on old paper. I convinced myself that if we raised our child with enough love, we could avoid whatever catastrophe the letter warned of. I ignored the warning. I proposed by candlelight. She said yes. And in doing so, I sealed the fate of the human race. We were happy for years. We got married, we traveled, and eventually, we had a son. We named him Leo. From the moment he was born, I looked for signs of the monster the letter had warned about, but I saw only a quiet, observant baby. As he grew, however, the unease returned. Leo was different. He was a prodigy, speaking in full sentences by 18 months, correcting my math by 4, but it was his emotional detachment that chilled me. He didn't cry when he fell. He didn't laugh at cartoons. He looked at the world as a series of equations to be balanced, not a life to be lived. There was a coldness in his eyes, a void where empathy should have been. I tried to love him enough for both of us, to instill warmth in him, but he was impervious to it, like a stone refusing to absorb the heat of the sun. By the time Leo turned 30, he was the most renowned physicist of his generation. The climate crisis had reached a tipping point, and humanity was desperate for a solution. Leo offered one. He had discovered a method to manipulate antimatter particles to scrub carbon and pollutants from the atmosphere at a molecular level. He called it Project Ether. The world hailed him as a savior. I, however, remembered the letter. I tried to warn him, tried to sabotage his work, but I was just an old architect who didn't understand the new science. I was dismissed as senile. The date of the launch arrived. I stood on my balcony, watching the sky, dread coiling in my stomach. When Leo activated the machine, the sky didn't clear. It turned a violent, bruising shade of violet. The reaction wasn't scrubbing the atmosphere, it was unraveling the atomic bonds of the oxygen itself. The air began to ignite. That brings us to the future I created, 2074. I am an old man now, living in a subterranean bunker, breathing recycled air, while the surface of the earth is a scorched wasteland of ash and storms. The population is decimated. I spent the last remaining years of my life hunting for a way to undo my mistake. I found access to a prototype temporal displacement unit, a relic from before the collapse. It had a fatal flaw. It could not transport living organic matter. It could only send dead tissue or inanimate objects like paper. That's why I couldn't go back myself. That's why I had to write the letter. I couldn't find ink that hadn't dried up years ago. So I used the only fluid I had. I pricked my finger and wrote the warning in my own blood, watching it dry into that rusty brown color I would eventually smell in 2024. I put it in the machine, set the coordinates for the night of the proposal, and prayed. But as I watched the envelope vanish into the temporal stream, a horrifying realization washed over me. I remembered receiving the letter, I remembered reading it, and I remembered ignoring it. The loop was closed. The letter wasn't enough. Information alone cannot change a heart blinded by love. I realized then that the only way to save the world was not to warn myself, but to break the man I was, the prototype machine. I lied to myself about its limitations. It didn't just reject living matter, it disintegrated it, scattering the consciousness across time like dust. There was a theoretical possibility, a ghost in the machine, that if one entered with enough intent, their consciousness could drift back. Anchored by a singular moment of regret, I stepped into the machine. The pain was absolute, a tearing of every atom. But I held on to the image of the apartment. I arrived not as a body, but as a force, a whisper in the mind of my younger self. I traveled back further, before the letter was found, before the ring was bought. I went to the moment I first met Sofia in that coffee shop 10 years prior. I was the spilled coffee that made her leave before I could walk over. I was the missed train that kept us from bumping into each other. I exerted every ounce of my spectral will to ensure we never met. I am now a ghost in a timeline I do not belong to. I drift through the city, invisible, forgotten by a universe that heals itself. The sky is blue. The air is sweet. Leo was never born. The world is safe. I watch Sofia sometimes. She's married to an accountant named Mark. They look happy. She laughs. That laugh, the one that used to be mine. She has a daughter with bright eyes and a warm heart. It kills me 1,000 times a day to see her love someone else, to know that in this reality, I am a stranger. She passed on the street once and forgot. But then I look up at the clear sky, free of violet flames, and I know this is the price. I carry the memory of a love that never happened so that the world can continue to exist. I am the only one who remembers the end of the world, and that is my penance. This story asks a terrifying question. Would you have the strength to erase the best parts of your life if it meant saving everyone else? If this paradox twisted your mind, please hit the like button. Helps the algorithm find more time travelers. Make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next story. And tell me in the comments, if you found a letter from your future self today, would you actually obey it? Or would you trust your heart?